Hey, babe.
It's cool.
Hello, all, and welcome to the Affluent Marriage Pod. You're listening to one financial coach and one educator talk about living a rich and full marriage through generational wealth building principles, authentic two-way communication strategies, and everything in between to become a couple that lives in love and walks in wealth. Your legacy begins here.
Oh my gosh. It's just such a good,
It's how we're going to start every
intro.
show. I'm excited to have it
there's
memorized.
gonna be
So,
people who memorize it.
right. And I also want to be one of those people so that I don't have to look at the screen. I've got a lot of it, but
Yeah.
so it's the start of episode 1.
This is our
This
very
is it.
first episode.
And I'm
yeah.
already going to deviate from the topic.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's do this.
Do you know how when you open up a book and one of the first few pages is a dedication page?
Yes.
I am about to dedicate you. I'm going to make a dedication to you.
To me?
Yeah, I'm gonna turn and I'm gonna look at you.
Oh, wow. This is
and I'm gonna
awkward.
ask
Okay.
you to take my hand.
Oh my gosh.
Yes. Yes. All right, serious face. Kim,
Oh my goodness. Okay.
I love you.
I love you too, babe.
You and I have been together since we were 12 years old.
Which is kind of insane.
We were brace-faced,
Yeah.
middle schoolers, and we were middle school sweethearts. We were immature little street youths in high school, and we were high school sweethearts together. We were adult practitioners in college, just trying to figure out what it means to be grown, and we stuck it out through college, and we were college sweethearts, and then we got married, and we are husband and wife, father and mother. We've got 2 beautiful girls. I can't say how much I love you and I appreciate you.
Babe.
I know that this podcast is my passion project. It's kind of something that I've been starting. But you are the star of the show.
Oh my gosh.
I know that you will shake your head vehemently
No.
at that and you will disagree. But when I tell you the things that you have accomplished and you have done in the last even 4 years, you just blow my mind. You left the classroom, you left the teacher's desk, and you went to the home office and you built your business from the ground up. And now you're a 6-figure just business chick, right? Mm-hmm. I'm incredibly proud of you.
Thank you.
And I know that if people stick around and listen, they're going to learn something because they're going to learn it from you. I'm just the guy behind the mic creating topics.
No.
You are the
have
one
so
disseminating
much-
knowledge. I know that I know things, but
Oh my gosh.
I'm making this, but it's because I'm trying to give you a platform because I know what you can do.
I don't,
That is my dedication.
if you're watching the YouTube, you'll see my face kind of contort because I don't know. You ever smile so much that your cheeks hurt?
I mean,
That's so sweet, baby. I am. You have always been my biggest cheerleader. This is such a gobfest to start off. People probably are like, forget this mess. What are we listening to? But
it's my podcast. I get to do whatever I want. And second of all, I wanted to treat this as like a historical document. Like if you ever wanted to go back, you could know, oh, if I listen to podcast episode 1, I get my dedication. So
That's true.
I wanted to create this historical document. Hey, people can skip. We can leave something in there. We can say something.
no, but
skip
I
2
will,
minutes in.
I will say this though, you have always been my biggest cheerleader, from even before when we were in college and, stuff like that. You've always been my biggest cheerleader. I've always had crazy ideas and I like things that I want to do, whether it's from going to different vacations to, oh my gosh, I have this idea for what we could do for a business. I've had several different ideas. And you've just always been a constant, you can do it. Go ahead, go for it. And to know, this is what this whole premise of this is about teamwork and also about not being a dream crusher. We're going to talk about that a lot, but not being a dream crusher, especially to your spouse, they're your teammate. And when he decided that he wanted to do this podcast, I was like, yeah, let's do it. When he decided he wanted to leave the classroom and go get additional testing and said, we just got our master's, and he was like, you know what, I want to switch fields in education. And I was like, oh, okay, yeah, man, let's do it. But to have that trust in the other person is so, so important. And I just really hope that is one of the main things that couples get out of this, is that it's not just about like, yeah, that's my husband, yeah, that's my spouse and whatever, but that like he is my best friend. And
Hi.
He is my best friend. And he's my biggest cheerleader, and I'm his biggest cheerleader, and I'm his best friend.
And you know what? In one of our first 6 podcasts, we're going to talk about why it's important to have a cheerleader. So that will be coming up. I believe that's in episode 6.
Look at you. Like
I've already got it mapped out. So now that I've completely just deviated from the topic, I want to try to bring us back.
Yeah, sorry
and
about that, guys.
Here we are at about like the 6 minute mark. Yeah, we're at about the 6 minute mark, and I'm going to go ahead and get us started.
Okay. All right.
So we have just recently finished a very brand new book.
Yeah.
By a hot topic author right now named Rachel Rodgers, and she wrote the book that says we should all be millionaires.
All be millionaires. Shout out to my girl Alicia Bush, because she is the one who was in my DMs and was like, "You've got to read this book. It reminds me of you." And I was like, "Okay." And I read it, and I was like, this book is fan-freaking-tastic. I love it. It makes me like feel so empowered about, making money and investing and just like changing my perspective on like money and like building empires and all that stuff. And then my coach, who I was telling her about it, and she's like, "Oh my God, I love this book." And it was just like wildfire. And then he was like, "What is this book?" And he was like, "I'm reading it."
I had to read it. And I'll talk more about that in a little bit. I had to.
It was so good.
I guess a little bit about this podcast. Sometimes we are going to talk about books that we've read and kind of take, mention our main takeaways. And, we always encourage you guys to go read the same books. Sometimes we're going to read articles and talk about those. Sometimes we're just going to do a deep dive with Kim and Dan and talk about like our life experiences.
Yeah.
And sometimes we're going to bring people on the show who are also highly successful entrepreneurs who are absolutely crushing it in their field. And they're going to give you a little Q&A about how they got started, things that they're doing, how they saw success, how they saw growth, how they invest, everything.
Yeah.
So it's going to be an crazy, crazy learning experience for everybody.
For sure. And, you might have questions. So those of you who are watching YouTube, or even if you're listening and you happen to friend with us on Instagram or whatever, like engage with us on socials and ask questions, ask us what things you want to get more information on, because we'd love to be able to support you and answer your questions here on air, while we're recording or whatever, because
I like that.
I mean, it's you guys have real life situations that you're working through, and we want to be able to support you any way we can. Maybe our story might help you.
So the basic premise of this book, all right, the main like summary, if you will, of this book and what it's all about is it encourages women to embrace their financial power and build wealth. Would you agree with that?
Oh, yes.
Right.
Especially financial power part.
So
female power.
Again, if you're not familiar, it's definitely worth a read. So I'm going to be honest, because you were kind of mentioning this earlier. When I heard that, some of your colleagues were reading this book, and when you were reading this book, I knew that this book wasn't for me in the terms that I was not the demographic. I'm not the target audience, right? But there was something about it. It was like your own little delectable secret. And I had to know. I don't know what movies you like where they have like, I guess like a burn book and stuff from like Mean Girls. Like just like, it was like this secret. I love that
you brought up Mean Girls. Yes.
It's like this secret book that like women were raving about, but it was like for women, by women. And I was like, man, like, I don't know.
He wants to be in the girls club.
He
wants to be in the girls club.
I gotta know. Like what's the hype? So again, me as a white male, like, am I the target audience?
No.
Hello to the no. Like,
I want you to know that it is not for you if you are a white male.
But I will say, even though I'm not the target audience, that doesn't mean that there's not wisdom poured, showered throughout this entire book.
Correct. I feel like it's definitely for, even if it's not your demographic, there's something you can learn about the demographic she is referencing. She talks a lot about the minority and the minority perspective, the minority female perspective. And so when you read it, there's stuff that I read in there that I was like, oh my gosh, I've never thought about this. This totally blew my mind when it comes to, how I view like even the ability that I have to even create a business in the space that I am in. How dare I have the audacity to think that I can't achieve something or that I have self-doubt, like bump that. Like it really just caused me to recognize that where I am is such a privilege. The ability for me to build a business is such a privilege, and I can't take any second for granted, because simply 50 years ago would be a totally different story and how I'd be able to do that. So it's a very, very good book. I think every person, especially if you're an entrepreneur, but every person should read it. Like, it's phenomenal.
I think we've sufficiently hyped up the book, correct?
Yes, sufficient.
All right, so okay. I have 6 main takeaways for this book.
I'm excited.
Now, I mentioned earlier, episode 6, we would be talking about like networking and such. So I'm thinking each one of these takeaways, we'll just do an episode.
Okay. That's perfect. I was going to say, oh my gosh, you're going to say 6 takeaways and we're going to talk so much.
No, we'll be here.
And this will be for like a 2-hour episode.
Yeah,
we can't do that.
2 in the morning recording if we did all 6 takeaways.
Okay, good. All right. So take away.
If you haven't noticed, we like to talk, especially about money. Get us talking about money, man. We will talk.
Yeah.
All right.
Such a millennial thing.
Here is the first takeaway. And you and I are going to do a little myth debunking on this episode.
Yeah.
Because this is a myth, I feel like, that has kind of like, I want to say like polarized, but that's not the word I'm looking for. But
You're right, though.
It's tormented, I guess, women through society for a long time.
Yeah.
Here is the first takeaway from We Should All Be Millionaires by Rachel Rodgers. And this is a myth we're going to debunk today.
Okay.
Women have been socialized to believe that they are not good with money.
And at this point, you may leave your comments as whether this is true or false.
Now,
because I know.
I already know your thoughts, but the people don't know your thoughts, right? They don't know what you're thinking. So when you first hear that myth that we are debunking today, that women have been socialized to believe that they're not good with money, like, what are your thoughts on this? Where does this even come from? Why would a woman even accept this?
Dude.
What's going on here?
It is such a... Back in society, go back to 1800s. No, but seriously, like, women have this perspective, I feel like, especially I work with female entrepreneurs. I don't know if we've said that. So my business, I'm a money coach. I'm a profit money coach. I love working with female entrepreneurs. I work with women who are really good at sales. They know how to make money. So like, this is the thing. But we have been socialized to believe that we're not good with money. Not that we can't make money, but that we're not good with managing money. If you look online, if you look on ads, like, you'll notice that there's such this perspective that the woman is not the one who is going to manage the money. She's not going to be the one who's able to, if she goes to spend something, there's always someone else saying, you can't do that, or why did you spend so much money? And sometimes it's the males too. Let me just say. But a lot of times in society, what they tell us is that it's the woman. It's the woman who's overspending. It's the woman who's not doing what she's supposed to do with her money. Women, the statistics around just women and retirement, like single women who are like not paying attention to their finances versus males who have maybe access to the information because it's so well talked about in their workspace, whereas females don't have, like, that's not our upbringing to learn about, numbers and math. And not that math is my favorite subject, because it was not, but we weren't taught about money. We're already not taught in the schools. We're already not taught in so many different places. It's just, and then society tells us, oh, well, you just go be a teacher, or you go do a female-oriented, thing, and it'll all work out. Like, you don't have to worry about being a millionaire. That's a man's job, right? You don't have to worry about being wealthy. That's a man's job. And I don't know, there's just all these social parameters, even within a marriage, that the woman is the one who takes care of the home. She makes sure the kids are good, and he goes to make the bacon, he goes to make the money, and he manages the money, and you just simply have to just get your allowance, and that's it. So I feel like there's lots of examples there. And I didn't give a lot of specific ones, but I feel like you guys can fill in the blanks. There's a lot of stuff that happens in that space that allows us to believe that we are no longer good with money. We can make all the money all we want, but when it comes to managing it, like we have this preconceived mindset that we cannot, and it's crippling females all over the place.
So again, the myth is women have been socialized to believe that they are not good with money. I'm an educator, been in education for almost 15 years. Here's my question for you, Kim. I'm going to give it to you like this from a learner's perspective. All right. Because you almost taught for a decade.
Yep.
In your time in the classroom, was there ever a student incapable of learning?
Absolutely not.
Absolutely not. And it doesn't matter if they had a learning disability or a 504. In Maryland, we call them IEPs, individual educational plans. It doesn't matter.
They're called IEPs everywhere.
Maybe they are. I'm thinking of something else then. Like,
but anyway.
I was talking to someone from Florida. Anyway, it doesn't matter what might be inhibiting a child from learning. They were all capable. I've never in my 15 years of education ever taught a child that was incapable of learning a concept.
Yep.
They just needed different avenues. They needed different styles of teaching. They needed something different to help them to grasp that concept.
Correct.
But no one is incapable. So for women to have been socialized to believe that they're not good, like an entire gender.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Because of what's between your legs.
Yeah.
Sorry. You
but it's like
good with, like, in no way, shape, or form do your organs determine your ability to understand and grasp a concept.
When you bring it down to that level, it sounds absurd because it is.
That's what I'm saying. That's how ludicrous it is to me.
It's so stupid.
That this is something that is legitimately believed.
It's dumb.
By men and probably by some women too, right?
Yeah. I definitely have thoughts on that.
Yes. Well, here's the deal. Let me say this first.
And I'm not going to talk yet.
Because when we were doing our B-roll, it looked like you were talking the whole time and I was just like smiling, which again, you're the star of the show.
Oh my gosh.
I'm just going to keep saying it. I need people to realize when I develop these podcast episodes, I have a computer full of notes for myself. Do you know how many notes I give my wife? None. It literally says, can you read this for me, Kim?
Kim's thoughts.
That's what it says, because I know that you'll go off.
Oh, I will.
Like I don't have to create notes for Kim. I have to create notes for myself. So I did a little research.
Okay.
And
I have not seen these notes. I just want to make sure people know. Like,
I think that keeps it authentic, right?
Yeah,
It keeps it real.
Yeah.
Fidelity.
Yeah.
They did a survey.
Uh-huh.
And they conducted a survey where they pooled together both male and female investors.
Okay.
Do you know what they discovered?
What?
That women actually saw more returns in their investments than men.
True. Mm-hmm.
And the reason is because women tend to keep their money, keep their stocks, keep their investments invested longer. Do you know what men are really good at?
Making brash decisions.
I was going to say pulling out, but that's probably a better way to put it. Men tend to pull their investments out. I don't know where your mind is. Men tend to pull their investments out more frequently than women do.
It's true.
And you will find in more of our conversations, the longer you keep your investments in over time, the greater your chance is to have a positive return on investment, to the point where if you keep your money in for, it says 30 years, you have a 100% chance of making money.
Yes. Women are patient. Women have the characteristics of an investor that, I mean, would make so many women millionaires because we're patient. We're not about making quick, brash decisions. We're okay letting something sit there and grow. We're good gardeners, okay? Actually, we're not. I'm a horrible gardener. But we appreciate the idea of, like, I'm going to diligently put something over here and watch it grow. Like, we don't mind the waiting process of it. So yeah, I have heard that study, and it's insane. Women are so much better at investing than men are, but yet there are a significant less amount of women who are investing than men.
I think it needs to be said, though, when I talk about these surveys and we talk about men and we talk about women, we're not using the word all men. We're not using the word all women. Like, not all women
Correct.
are better investors than men. Not all men are worse or better, right?
Yeah, there's extremes.
Not all women are socialized to believe that they're not good with money, right? We're not talking about extremes, but research shows, data shows, right? We're using facts here. Facts. All right. Women tend to be better investors than men, which absolutely like rips the legs out underneath that myth, right? It just like completely debunks that concept.
So true.
So going further, a little bit further, women, it is also true though, you know, women experience systemic inequalities. Right?
Yep.
Women earn less than their male counterparts.
The pink tax sucks. It's stupid.
They have to take breaks from work. Typically, they do that to care for their children or to care for their elderly relatives.
Or themselves.
Right.
You know that Spain, I think it's Spain, is one of the only countries that allows for women to take leave for their period.
Really?
Yeah. Because that can be really traumatic for some women, right? Like endometriosis, there's a lot of like medical conditions with it that cause them to not be able to work. So Spain has, I think, passed a law where they can actually take time off, and it's like paid time off.
Good for Spain.
I know.
Women also live longer. So all of these things, right, that I've just mentioned impacts their long-term financial securities.
Correct.
Right? You make less, you live longer, you take leave, you take care of your elderly parents, right? All of these things impact your financial situation. So when you think about that, like instead of, you know, falling into this myth, really what we need to look at is the truth, look at the facts and come alongside women and help support them and try to combat this systemic issue that is plaguing women.
It's true. Yeah. And I think the wave that I love right now that's happening is like since the pandemic and even probably before that, there's so many women who are choosing to stay home, right? Because they were like, you know, work is like crazy, right? So they decided to stay home, be with their kids, and they wanted to be able to have the choice. And so they've turned to coaching, network marketing, and other places that allow them to be flexible and still make money while being able to care for their children. And what an amazing opportunity, because the side hustles that you can get right now are kind of infinite. Like there's so many different ways that you can bring in extra cash. And, you know, if you are you're caring for your kids and you want to be able to have that choice and you want to be able to invest and you want to be able to save, like now is a better time as ever for you to have the best of both worlds, to be able to care for your children while also building an empire from in your jammies. Like you can do that now. And that was not always the case. I think the other thing is, even though the women in that situation, the biggest thing that probably gets in their way is that systemic like mindset that I can't because I'm not good with money. Again, it goes back to that. So if we just like dismantle that perspective that we're not good with money and instead say, oh no, I have every opportunity just like any other person to create my wealth, then there could be more wealthy stay-at-home moms. Like I'm down with that.
Absolutely.
You know, so yeah, it's a thing.
And I think it's important for them to identify where that like socialized belief is coming from, right? Since they were a newborn, it was in the movies that they watched growing up. It was in the shows that they watched. It was in the books that they read. It was in the articles that they read. It was probably even in their own household, right? How many, you know, children, I think about your childhood. Just think about it. Maybe it's true. Maybe it's not. Was your father growing up that stereotypical dad? And I'm not saying makes him a good or a bad dad. That's not what I'm saying. But was he that stereotypical male that he was the breadwinner? He took care of the money. He handled all that. Mom might have had a job too, but Was she the one taking you to the doctor? Was she the one going to the parent teacher conferences? Was she the one doing those types of jobs? Was she doing the chores around the house or the cooking, the cleaning? Was she doing those things? Right? Because if that's your whole childhood, that's what you saw. That's your mental. When you're looking for a partner, when you're looking for a spouse, whether you admit it outwardly or not, you have this internalized belief that man that you marry or that woman that you marry is going to take that role.
Right. And not only that, though, it's also like when it comes to money and having conversations around money, if your parents didn't talk about money around you, right? But then you also pair it with all these other things that you're seeing around the stereotypical like household, you're going to internalize these roles and go, oh, well, it's not, I'm not supposed to do the money. You're supposed to do the money because I'm the wife and I'm supposed to take care of these things. But what if I don't want to? What if I'm not really good at cooking? What if I'm not really good at cleaning bathrooms? I'm not. He is.
I'm phenomenal.
That is his job. He loves it. And I'm
Watch
like,
me
go
scrub
for
a
it.
toilet. That thing will be so white. You remember?
Love it.
Yeah.
I love that you brought it all full circle. So I think that, like if you grew up around that and if you grew up around not talking about money, but when it was talking about money, it was fights. It was, how dare you? It was, I can't believe you spent that much. You can't be going around and doing all of that. If that's what you grew up around and it was never talked about building wealth, it was always scarcity. You have to be the person to recognize what you've just, what has been happening in your life and be like, do I agree with that? Is that how I want my life to live? I was talking to someone today who said, I had to recognize that I didn't want that. I was tired of being stuck. And you have to have that self-realization to go, I'm tired of being stuck. I recognize that I have the ability to do it. Once you do that, then you can kind of, you're able to actually roll with it and go, okay, no, I can do this. And then you're willing to learn. That's the start.
Help me remember this word. If you're like blinking and breathing, these are not things that you think about. You just do them without thinking. If it comes to you,
automatically?
That's great. Automatic, there's a different word. But if that's your life, I know you're going to think about it and say it if you remember. Involuntary.
Okay.
Those are involuntary actions. Like you don't have to think about those things.
Right.
They just happen, right? And when these beliefs are so deeply rooted within your childhood, they become involuntary. You're not actually thinking about these things when you're looking for these partners and going into these marriages with these expectations. But like you said, I love that. When you become conscious of these things, like that's when you can start to, kind of dig up these things
and pinpoint it and go, wow, where did that even come from? And then it's kind of like therapy, honestly. Like some people call what I do when I talk to them and I'm like able to go a little bit deeper into like, where is that even coming from? It's like financial therapy almost, like, because they recognize, oh my gosh, that's what my mom used to do. That's what my dad used to do. And that was my expectation. And so when I got into this relationship, I thought that that's what I had to do. And when he didn't reciprocate what I thought he should do in terms of like managing the money or whatever, I would get mad. So I would just, like the only way I felt control was to go spend, whatever it happens to be. But when we recognize it, it's really like you have a responsibility to take care of it. And either you can DIY it, which is totally fine, but know that you're going to have to climb those hurdles and keep pushing forward to like get better and to understand how to like correct some of those things that you've had to self-correct,
So,
or you can invest.
Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take us back to one of the statements that I said at the very beginning of the show. Mm-hmm. I said, I might not have been the target audience for this book, but there is wisdom showered throughout the book, right?
For sure.
Right now, we've talked a lot about women. Yeah. There are men that are listening in, and they're probably thinking, why am I listening to this podcast about women? But I really want to pinpoint that, and I want to talk about that. Because there's wisdom here, right?
Right.
As a man, I'm a man. As a man, it is important for me to know my expectations in a marriage, in a partnership, because it doesn't have to be marriage, it could be a partner, and my wife's expectations. Mm-hmm. So having that conversation about money and saying, what was your expectation when we came together? Did you expect for you to be like your mom? Did you expect for you to be like your dad? Did you expect me? Or are we both doing both roles? Like, what is it? Now, you and I very much do both roles,
We
right?
do. Yeah.
There's nothing that you do that I don't do, and nothing that I do that you like. We very much have a very like, we are both the nurturers.
Yeah.
And we're taking care of the money and the wealth, like we're handling it together. But for men listening, I think it's important for you, if you're going to have that authentic communication with your wife, you need to know what her beliefs are. What were her expectations in this marriage? And if you guys have limited beliefs, y'all need to squash that together.
Yes, you do. Right. And to get over your pride over that. You know what I mean? Like, if you're willing to have the conversation, be willing to trust that person. Like we talked at the beginning, this is your best friend, right? You're pledging your life to this person. If they are your best friend, you truly do believe and trust them. Even if you're working through, something personally where maybe you had, some trust issues before, you have got to take the leap with them and having these conversations and being vulnerable and saying, okay, this is my perspective of what I view and everything. And none of what you're saying is bad necessarily. It's just good to know, because if they're not compatible, your view and my view of what it looks like, then that's something we have to stop and like go, okay, well, can we come to a middle ground? Because otherwise, it's not just going to go away.
It's going to be a detriment.
It's going to keep
to your
coming
wealth.
up.
It really will.
It really
will
will
be a detriment to your wealth.
Because money touches everything.
So we're going to kind of
bring it down.
Bring this to a quote here.
Ooh.
Yeah. So I have a quote here that I think really applies to what we've been talking about. And then I also have our first affluent archive piece.
Oh my goodness, guys. The affluent archive is pretty awesome.
It's real.
It's real.
It's real.
It's a real thing.
So here's a quote. This is from Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Love that book.
Great book, right?
Great book.
The single most powerful asset we all have is our mind. If it's trained well, it can create enormous wealth seemingly instantaneously.
So true.
An untrained mind can also create extreme poverty that can crush a family for generations. It reminds me of that quote. You know how you always see these shows where they're like, take a millionaire away from his business, take him away from his wealth, take him away from whatever, drop him in the street and see what he does. And they always find that like they end up bouncing back and creating some successful business, right? That person, they don't need the money.
Yeah.
They don't need any of those assets, because their greatest asset was their mind.
Yeah.
If you know how to create a business, if you know how to make an LLC and walk that path, there's nothing stopping you. There is so many advantages to knowing how to run and operate and create and start a business.
Yep.
I was honestly you, right? I'm going to talk about you again. This is what I do. I'm your biggest cheerleader, right?
Dude.
I'm starting this podcast and Kim has created her business. She's been doing it for like 4 years now. I had no idea where to start or where to begin. And you would just seemingly, just pop off all these different ideas and steps. And like you had an organized list of here's what you need to do first, second, third, fourth. Like it was, it was incredible.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Well, I think here's the deal too. You probably, those listening, watching, have something that you've done in your past that you're like, oh my goodness, like I could do this in the back of my hand. Like I know, like riding a bike or whatever, it feels like that. And there's a task that you could do. And once you do it once and you have figured out how to solve problems that come up and you're able to do it super fast, it's easy to teach it to somebody else, or it's easy to replicate it even if you didn't have any of the materials. You could do it, right? And so I feel like building a business is similar to that. Whether you've made $1 million with that business, whether you've made $10,000 with that business over the course of however much you have. Once you have built a business once and you see like, oh, you know what? That worked. That didn't work. Okay, that sucked. Then the next time you do it, you're able to go over those hurdles so much faster. And this is like my third business that I've tried. And this is the one that's actually worked. But I mean, the other ones have been a little bit like slower paced or whatever. But I will say, like, I have definitely learned so much that I'm able to, anybody comes up to me and was like, is this a good idea? I'm like, yeah, it's a good idea. Here's what I would do. I could riff off ideas. I would not say I'm a business coach by any means, but I do have an understanding of like how to build a business. And it's the same thing with your money too. Like once you do it once, like, it's easy to build. It's easy to
you have the discipline.
Back. Yeah.
Yes. I would argue that you do have a lot of knowledge on being a business coach just because you've paid for so many business coaches.
I really have. That's my thing.
This quote has two parts.
Okay.
Right? It talked about the power of a mind, but it also talks about how it can really hurt you. So my really question for the listeners is, what are you doing today to better yourself? Now,
That's a good question.
the easy and obvious answer is you're listening to this podcast, right? But if you didn't have an answer to that question, then you kind of answered the first question, right? If you don't know what you're doing today to better yourself for tomorrow, then you're not doing it.
Right. You're hurting
Right.
yourself.
So my men, right? If you're out there and you're not partnering with your wife in that way, or you're very much like, I got this, you're really being a detriment to your potential wealth by not
That's true.
partnering with your wife, because contrary to that stupid belief,
Yeah. Women
actually are very good with money.
Yeah. And I have another word out there for the men, right? Because I know there's some excuses popping up. Well, they're so this or they're so that. They won't sit down. They won't listen. Keep listening to the podcast and we'll tell you how to make sure that you can foster that better communication between your spouse so that you can have these conversations. Use this episode as a catalyst if you'd like to.
Absolutely. All right. And, just like there's that belief that women spend money on all these like frivolous things, men spend money on a lot of stuff too.
Oh, yes, they do.
Men love them some technology or
Yep.
some hunting. Oh man, we like some stuff.
Oh, yeah.
I love
Yeah.
stuff. Do you love stuff?
Oh, I love stuff.
Oh, I love some stuff.
We love some stuff.
All right, I'm going to leave us today with our affluent archive.
Okay.
And then we'll wrap this up.
Wrap it up.
We're going to add this to the list. But your first affluent archive data piece or little quote that we've come up with here to kind of
Wrap it all up.
is your depth of knowledge correlates with your ability to generate wealth.
That's a good one.
Your depth of knowledge.
Yep.
Your greatest asset is your mind, and that correlates with your ability to generate wealth.
Yep.
So train it up. Keep listening to our podcast. There's no way you can't grow if you're listening to our podcast.
Yep.
Literally
This is the
getting
space.
wisdom from a six-figure financial coach
Multi-six.
and an educator who just does a lot of research and does a lot of work.
We put a lot of this stuff into action. So we have like actual
life
experience
experience,
behind
for
it. That's
sure,
for
for
sure.
sure.
Yes. So thank you guys so much for hopping on and for watching our very
Yeah, thanks for listening to our first episode. We've got another episode coming tomorrow. Tomorrow.
We're
Coming
working
up,
fast.
we are working on it tomorrow. We are going to record tomorrow. But this next one, just a heads up, it's going to be talking about how to build wealth.
Oh, I'm excited. I love building wealth. Building wealth makes me happy. I want to build more wealth.
All right, guys. You guys have a wonderful day. Take care. Be safe out there.
Bye, guys. Have a great one.
Live in love. Walk in wealth.
Woo woo.